Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Logitech Sync discussion. I'm Calvin Chang, Product Marketing Manager for Logitech Video Collaboration. And today I'm joined by Trevor Rush, Senior Product Manager for Logitech Sync. Trevor, I'm going to give you a moment to say hi, everyone.
Hey everybody, excited to be here today to talk more about Logitech Sync.
Awesome. Today's discussion is titled Using Logitech Sync for the Hybrid Workplace. And what we did is we took your questions that you submitted during the registration process and created a discussion, and hopefully we will answer a ton of your questions. But before we jump into that discussion, I do want to point out some aspects of our platform, Bevy. So we have a Q&A functionality, and you're going to see in the right-hand chat corner, three subsections: General, Q&A, and DMs. For questions during this discussion, please add your questions into the Q&A section, and we're going to have moderators taking a look and making sure that they're sending over the most commonly asked or most pressing or important questions that we feel like would be important to address. And we'll take the time, maybe the last 10 minutes at the end of today's discussion, to answer those. If you have any general comments, go ahead and populate those in general, but we won't really be taking a look at in that section for questions. So again, populate your questions into the Q&A section. And if you do have any issues in terms of technical problems, there is a question mark where you'll see help. That's Bevy's help section for any type of troubleshooting. So feel free to check in that direction if you're running into any technical issues. And lastly, we are joined today by Claude from ImageThink, and she's going to be capturing today's discussion by illustrating our ideas into images. So you'll be viewing Claude's board as she follows along in our conversation. And I've seen this before, and you're going to be amazed, but she does a really amazing job. So we will follow up with her illustration after today's call as well. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. And to start off, we're going to have a discussion around three main topics. First is simplicity with scalability. Then we're going to talk about security. And then lastly, we're going to give everyone a sneak peek, and we'll close with questions. So with that being said, we'll get started. Trevor, with Sync, a topic that keeps coming up and everyone keeps hearing about is simplicity at scale. Can you give me a review of what that means?
Yeah, for sure, Calvin. So really what simplicity at scale means when it comes to Sync is that it's just as easy to deploy one or two rooms as it is to deploy thousands. We really want this to be just as simple as humanly possible for you to deploy this for your meeting room devices. We don't want to add any extra burden to you. We want this to be a very simple experience. So, and then in terms of the scalability beyond deployment, what this really means is that it helps you scale your the growth of your meeting rooms that you have deployed. So with the monitoring aspects and being able to ensure that your rooms are in a usable state, regardless of where they are, if they're down the hall or if they're around the world, you're able to see that they're online ready for use. Same goes for the management aspects of being able to push out firmware updates or settings changes to your devices globally in just a few clicks. So it's the same experience if you have just one meeting room in your office here, or if you have thousands of meeting rooms. Then even beyond that, thinking about how people are utilizing your meeting rooms with tools like we have, like Sync Insights, that provides you more insights into how these types of spaces are being leveraged. You can really get a good picture of what needs to change and what needs to be modified to continue the growth and expansion of your meeting rooms.
Got it. So it sounds like there are quite a few areas that Sync helps out with. Would you say that there are any certain types of organizations that should be using Sync?
No, I think that Sync is really a great solution for any size of organization. If you're a small company or a startup with just a couple of rooms, I think that it's definitely helpful to understand what's going on, and even those couple of rooms versus the large scale deployments that we see some of our customers doing with up to thousands of rooms. I think that you'll find value regardless of the size of your organization.
Got it. And have you seen any particular industries that it's been concentrated in, or I guess my question is, what do our users tend to look like?
Yeah, I mean, there. The simple answer is it's everybody. We have different types of users from all different kinds of verticals, be it like education, tech, energy. It spans all types of organizations because really what it comes down to is all these different organizations really have the same needs to meet with their employees, and so it really spans all types of different verticals.
Got it. So what you're telling me is I have at least, at least one employee or enough employees to have meeting rooms. I can be in any industry. So I'm qualified. And let's say right now I have 1 to 2 rooms set up with sync. Based on what we're talking about, that's not quite quote unquote at scale. So tell me, why should I add all my Logitech devices into sync, especially if much of our workforce is going to be working remotely?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think the workplace is really changing around how we are sort of collaborating and meeting on a daily basis. And I think that what we've heard from our customers and what we're seeing is as the return to the office kind of approaches, that a lot of people are going to be working in a very hybrid style. So people might not be in the office all the time. So this kind of just exemplifies the need to have your meeting spaces available and ready for video conferencing to make sure that people are having a good experience and they can meet with those remote employees at all times. So I think that this is just really emphasizing the need to make sure that you have eyes on these rooms at all times, and that you can really make sure that you're confident in what you have deployed for your users.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about how sync or what sync does to achieve that.
Yeah, so I think with that previous answer, I kind of covered this a little bit, but I'll be a little bit more kind of direct with these ones here. But I think one of the big goals is really to summarize by 100% uptime. Like you want to know that your meeting rooms are always ready for the next group of people to go into that room, or if something happens, that you can jump on that and make sure that you get it fixed very quickly. Because we've all been in that experience where you go into a meeting room, or there's been that meeting room down the hall that we don't go into because there's been a problem in there for like weeks, and IT hasn't fixed it. You don't have time because you're about to jump into a meeting, so you just go find another space. So making sure that your your office has all those spaces available at all times is a huge benefit. And then this from the user's perspective, if I'm running around to go to a meeting in the office, this provides me with a consistent experience as well. So I know when I walk into a meeting room what to expect. Everything is working. I know how to use this equipment. It's a very nice experience for the end user. Then the last point, just kind of on that, I wanted to touch on is just with the information that you're able to get out of sync, in terms of meeting usage and occupancy information, you're able to figure out how to more efficiently balance your rooms. If it means outfitting different rooms with different types of technology, moving stuff around, or potentially working with facilities on changing some aspects of the way you have your office set up to make it more efficient and effective for your teams, we have information that can help with that.
Got it. So those sound like great benefits, especially organization wide. Can you tell me a little bit about at a deeper level in terms of like IT, right? The IT department that is using Sync, what are they going to get out of it?
Yeah, I think two things really. So just greater visibility of the workplace, I think, is the utmost importance, and I think this really gives IT managers and the people who are deploying this type of technology much greater confidence in like what they're doing, rather than having to. It takes the guesswork out of it. Really, is what it comes down to. You have a clear picture of what your rooms look like that you can always refer back to. Um, and then the second piece being time saving. So this is just going to save you a lot of time in the long run. So we've tried to make the setup as painless as possible. Then as you continue to use the tool to troubleshoot and understand what the issues are before you send anybody out to those rooms, and also deploying firmware updates with just a couple clicks. I think the time savings aspects are huge.
Got it. So that idea of time saving sounds really great. Visibility sounds great as well. So obviously, I need my devices in order to get those benefits. So how do you suggest I go about adding rooms and devices?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple ways that we provide this through Sync. So and they're both very easy. So I'll kind of talk through these couple scenarios. So one being that you can just go download the Sync app from our support site, install it on the meeting room PC, authenticate with your Sync credentials, and boom, your room is done. You're set up and connected to Sync. You can view everything through the Sync portal. This is easy to do if you just have either a couple of rooms, or if, for example, you're doing a new deployment and you're kind of setting up all your PCs before they're deployed out to the meeting room. Then you're able to do this manually and get everything kind of set up as you roll out the equipment to the rooms. Alternatively, if you already have a large deployment out there in your organization, we've made it very easy to work with tools that you already use today. For example, like SCCM or Intune or Jamf, if you're using Mac, to push out the sync application stub and the provisioning token to those machines. They'll automatically provision back to Sync Portal, and you'll see them connected right away. So regardless of how small or big you are, or what type of kind of deployment you're doing, we've got something to make it easy for you. And we've also got a lot of good step-by-step guides on Sync Portal and some videos on exactly how to do this.
Got it. And is this just down to one person? Does only one person get access to Sync, or is it open to like a large team or multiple team members to do the work?
Yeah, you can add as many people as you want to your Sync organization to make this many hands make lighter work. Yeah, you can add as many team members as you want to your Sync portal account with different admin capabilities to make sure that they have the correct scope for the work that they're going to be doing. But yeah, you don't have to do this alone.
Got it. And would you say there's like a better time to do it, or is this just something that it's better to do it up front?
Yeah, I think that honestly, it's a very good time to start like investigating this now. Before you have more and more people going back to the office who are going to be leveraging these spaces. I think it'll be super important just to potentially tackle this deployment right now before that happens.
Got it. So let's say now my rooms are registered. What does my ongoing commitment look like?
The ongoing commitment is very small once you have these rooms already deployed. So ideally, what I think this would be looking like is that you're coming back into the Sync portal like a couple times a month just to check on things, make sure everything looks as you expect it to be, check if there's new firmware updates, and to investigate some of the analytics that we're able to provide with Sync Insights. Because we don't want you to always be coming back in here or living in this dashboard. We don't want to make your day-to-day harder or give you another tool that you always have to use. So with integrations like ServiceNow that we have, which are able to push you alerts as they happen in these meeting rooms, like for example, MicPod gets disconnected, you get a ServiceNow ticket automatically created, it gets resolved automatically once the issue is gone. This is very helpful, and it means that you don't always have to be living in the Sync dashboard looking for problems. You'll get notified about those problems as they happen.
Got it. Are there any other ways to get alerts?
Yeah, so actually, I just mentioned the ServiceNow integration there, but we're actually going to be rolling out email alerts very soon here to cover those folks who we know not everybody ServiceNow. So you'll be able to customize your email within Sync so that you can get these same type of proactive notifications even if you're not using ServiceNow.
Got it. And talking about ServiceNow, right? This is a third-party provider, so I'm thinking about outside this kind of realm of Sync itself, right? So let's say I'm using Teams or I'm using Zoom. They're going to have their own dashboard or consoles to manage devices as well. Can you tell me a little bit about how Sync should coexist with those dashboards or consoles?
Yeah, I think what you said is exactly right. There is like that they kind of coexist. So they're very complementary at this time, I believe. In terms of what you can tackle with like the Zoom or Teams dashboard in managing the the service application that you're using, or even with Teams being able to manage things like Windows version and Windows updates. But then on the sync side, being able to have a greater understanding of what's going on with your devices, with the monitoring aspects, being able to push those for more updates and gain those analytics that we're pulling directly from the rooms. This isn't information that you can grab directly from those service provider dashboards. So I think that together holistically, they give you a very good understanding of how your room and your technology and your service are being utilized on a daily basis.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of what we talked about earlier with the visibility, right? So it's like adding all these pieces is really what's giving you that visibility into your workplace.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. And again, on the topic of integrations, are there any other tools or integrations that are important to know about?
Yeah, so I mean, when we were developing Sync uh, years ago now, but when we were doing this, we took a very open approach to it. We think Sync is a great tool, and we'd love for you to use it and give us feedback. But we want to make sure that we play well with others, and that if you're already leveraging a different tool or a platform to get these types of information, that we can integrate with them. So we have an API that we've worked with a number of partners on using, so that they can provide some of the basic monitoring and management features through their platform that you may have seen in Sync as well. So this includes partners like AVI SPL, and actually we just wrapped up an integration with the Lenovo Think Smart Manager dashboard, where they're able to provide the same sort of monitoring information as well as triggering firmware updates directly by leveraging the Sync API on the meeting room PC. So pretty cool stuff.
Got it. And how about non-Logitech devices?
Yeah, so during the developments of Sync, we were always talking to our customers about what they want to be seeing in the product itself, and some of the feedback we received was, hey, we love what we're seeing here, but we've got some non-Logitech devices in our deployment. We'd love it if we could see those in just our inventory, even if we can't do much with them. So even as much as we hate to believe that there's people out there using non-Logitech devices, we now support what we call monitored devices. So it's to include devices from third parties and even some of our legacy devices as well. So this includes things like the Avercam 540, Hudley IQ, Poly Studio. You can see these directly through the Sync inventory, and you can get very basic information from these about if the device is connected or not. So you don't have any of the management capabilities, but you can at least get the sort of very basic monitoring to understand if those devices that you need in those rooms are still connected.
Got it. And of course, we recently announced some new products like Rally Bar Mini. How's that going to work with Sync? Is that
Yeah,
covered?
yeah, of course. Yeah. So any of the new products that we're making are supported by Sync out of the box. The Rally Bar and Rally Bar Mini running the Collab OS platform is extremely exciting, and we're excited to have it integrated into Sync. So the setup actually looks very, very similar to how you would be doing this with the meeting room PC. When you boot up your Rally Bar or Rally Bar Mini, you can just go to the Sync app in the settings there, enter your credentials, and then you connect just to Sync Portal, just like you would with the PC. So very straightforward in terms of setup. And then the great side about the Collab OS, where you're always getting updates on these new products, is that we're able to continue improving these devices very, very quickly. So adding more and more settings for Collab OS through Sync, which we're very excited about.
Got it. It's great to know and always hear that we're constantly adding new updates and continue to make our products better.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. It's one of the things I think that we're very excited about, especially with these new products.
Yeah. So I think you have me convinced, right? There are so many benefits to signing up for Sync, managing devices at scale, saving that time, getting more visibility and insights. So now I need to move on to the next step of convincing my organization to adopt Sync. So how do I do that?
Yeah, I think the first step is really just getting a little bit better of an understanding of, of what sync is kind of built on top of, and like what type of like information we're collecting, and things like that, just to give you a little bit more ammo when you're going to start having those discussions with your team. So what we're actually have been working on with the team is a security and privacy white paper that we'll have available from the sync website on logitech.com, and actually we'll send it out to all you folks as well after once it's available in the coming weeks here, to make sure that you have it handy. But this is really kind of the first step, just understanding and giving yourself a little bit more confidence in, what the product is that you're looking at in terms of deploying to your whole organization.
Okay, got it. So once we're through the evaluation, now we get the go ahead, right? Hey team, go ahead, let's implement sync. This makes sense. What can you do to help me get approved?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of customers on this type of process, and generally a lot of organizations have kind of their own processes in place. How do they vet these types of applications, and what sort of questions that they need answered. So we've put together what we call our self-assessment questionnaire on our side here. So if you're at that stage, we can provide this over to you. It has a ton of great information about security, privacy, legal aspects, and even engineering answers to some of the questions of how is this kind of architected. So we're able to definitely give you a really good start on filling out all of that documentation if your organization requires it, and then of course we can help fill in the blanks if there are any after that as well.
Got it. So I know there's a lot of information in that self-assessment questionnaire, probably covering a lot of topics in the white paper. Can you just give me like a sample or an idea of what are some of the most common topics that organizations bring up when they evaluate sync?
Yeah, no problem. I think a lot of this kind of comes around like user data. So like what type of information are we capturing from the meeting rooms? Is there any personally identifiable information? Are we GDPR compliant? Things like this that we can easily get answered in the white paper and in the self-assessment questionnaire. What else? So we also dive into a lot of sort of the basics in terms of security, and like what types of platforms we're built on. Like for example, like we leverage Amazon AWS for our cloud platform, and we use a lot of the technology that they have out of the box, which is industry leading. So we're very happy with that. And then questions like are we sharing this data with any other like partners or third parties that you're not aware of? No, we don't. Just FYI. But and then also just questions about into the nitty gritty of what URLs is the app required to use to connect to our sync backend, making sure that things are that we're compliant with your firewall and things like this to make sure that sync runs correctly. We have all of this information available.
Got it. Um, so let's say I get through this process, right? Like I'm approved. My team, they're allowed to use it. What's the easiest way for me to start logging into sync? Do I have to remember password or
What a great leading question. Uh, um, so um, yeah, so actually we're in the process of rolling out single sign-on right now. We've actually done it for a couple users already, so we're excited to kind of expand this and make it more widely available for our user base. So we'll actually have a form inside of Sync where you can go and you can request single sign-on access, and we'll work directly with you to make sure that that gets set up correctly. Right now, we have setups done for Okta and Azure Active Directory, but as long as you're using a SAML-based single sign-on provider, we can work with you to make sure that that works for your environment.
got it? And how about proxy support?
Yeah, so proxy support's a huge topic. We know that a lot of customers have this on their corporate networks. So this is actually something we're working on as we speak, and we're hoping to have this available within this quarter here, available for our customers to start using proxy configuration with the Sync app to make sure that they have there's no issues whatsoever with the network connectivity. Like I said, with proxy support and all the information we're able to provide for firewall configuration, you should be good to go.
Got it. So we just talked about a couple of upcoming features. So I understand that we have new features that come out. Some of the recent ones that already released were features like multi-tenancy, room groups. So, speaking of features that have released, features that will be upcoming, what can I expect in terms of release cycles?
Yeah, so our first and foremost concern with Sync is always making sure that we're pushing out bug fixes and improvements on a healthy cadence. So this is about sort of a 6 to 8 week cadence right now to get out new versions of the Sync app, to continuing to make it just better and better as we go. And on about a 6 to 8 week cadence right now. So we're constantly improving this. And then on the sort of feature aspect of things, we're usually rolling in sort of larger features for customers that every quarter, and these really are driven by getting customer feedback from customers like these folks on the webinar here. We really take this to heart, and it seriously helps us prioritize exactly what we're working on, because we want to make sure that you're the users and you guys get what you want. It satisfies your needs.
Got it. And did you mention how often would you say there are new features released in a, let's say, given year?
Yeah. So I mean, I larger features, I would say like room groups and CI. That's like on sort of this, so 1 to 2 every quarter, I would say right now. But again, that this shifts a little bit depending on the size and scale of these features.
Yeah. Well, speaking of size and scale of features, maybe we should kind of take it back a step and um, give us that sneak peek you're talking about. So, can you share the long-term vision for Logitech Sync?
Yeah. So what a great segue. So yeah, I think that really today, Sync is really focused around the meeting room. So being able to make sure that all your devices in the meeting room are connected, they're running, you can update them, you can gain these analytics from your meeting rooms. But as we know, especially from this year of now working at home, the meeting room isn't the only place that people meet. And there's a lot of Logitech devices deployed in other spaces, such as your home office or even your office, at your desk at the office. So you have devices like your headset here and your webcam that have up till today been pretty invisible to your IT managers once they send them out to you. So what we're going to be doing is bringing in the personal collaboration devices into Sync. So this will give IT managers much more visibility over all of the places that people are meeting, not just the meeting rooms. So yeah, that's kind of the overarching story there, Calvin. But I wanted to kind of dive a little bit more into kind of like what that looks like. I'm sure that was your next question.
Yeah. So, before, yeah, like, I guess to maybe jump into that, right? So you mentioned a bit about those personal collaboration devices. Um, Maybe before we get there, let's talk about the meeting room, and then we'll separate it out into the
Sure.
the personal devices side. So I already have a ton of devices, right, that I already own. Do I need to worry about losing any of that support as we focus on the future?
Definitely not. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that one of the great things that we do here at Logitech is providing always providing updates for those older devices. Like Meetup has been out for a handful of years now, and we're still providing updates as often as we can to make little tweaks here and there where we can. Like I think it was last year, a year and a half ago. Even though that was well after Meetup's launch, we were making some audio tweaks just to make sure that things just sounded just right, and even launching features like Right Sight for Rally Camera and for Meetup after the product had launched, because we knew we could get even more functionality out of these cameras as they progressed on. So we're always looking for ways to improve these devices even after they've launched.
Got it. All right, well, let's go to the personal collaboration side, right? So those are in the meeting rooms. Sounds like, that's been where a lot of the focus is. And then if you mentioned the sneak peek is the focus on other meeting spaces like my desk, we have devices like my Zone headphones or my webcam, like my Brio. Can you tell me a little bit, maybe dive a little bit deeper into how like those are going to be managed?
Definitely. So what we have today is for your end users, in their office or at home here, is the Tune application. So this is where you can go in and make the customizations for your side tone on your headset or some image correction on your Brio, things like autofocus and stuff like that. So you can go and have this nice user experience for the end user. And what we're going to be doing is making sure that the Tune app can talk directly to your Sync portal backend. So now you'll have the Sync app in the meeting room, either running on the PC or on the appliance device, communicating back to the Sync portal. And then you'll have the Tune app running on your users' computers, also connecting back to the Sync portal. So you have the great overview of your meeting rooms and your personal spaces available to your IT user in one easy place.
Got it. So just to recap, the Tune app, it's not meant for someone like myself, the IT manager, but it's really meant for that remote participant or that individual knowledge worker. They get to customize. But the benefit of the Tune app for me is that it helps kind of give me that link to understand what's the firmware my workers are running on their Brio or their Zune or their Zone, and it helps them make sure that that's up to date, and it also helps me keep track of where those devices are as well.
I don't think we would support Zune, but I think Microsoft will be happy about that. But yes, but so yeah, you have it right there. So the Tune app provides a lot of great functions, like myself sitting here at my desk, but then it provides that cloud connection functionality for the remote IT manager to have visibility over their organization and deployment. And even just as kind of a, preview of kind of, the functionality that we're looking at here, it's what we've learned from the IT managers that we've talked to is really they want to understand, what does their deployment look like? How many devices do I have out there? How many people are using these? Because that's something that's a little bit of a black box today. So that's kind of question one they want answered. And then two is, how do I provide updates for these devices? Because there isn't a very effective way to do that at this time. So making sure that we're able to answer these questions and provide you a good insight into what your deployment looks like and an easy way to manage firmware updates and make these things available to your end users is a huge win.
Got it. Got it. Well, Trevor, thanks for taking my questions for today's discussion. I do want to jump into the questions that our audience today has added in. Going to try to maybe go as back maybe to like the closer topics that we talked about at the beginning, and then some of the ones that may be a little bit more granular. So one thing is we talked about that simplicity at scale, and one aspect that you mentioned was insights. Can you let our audience know if they don't have insights enabled already, what's the best way for them to get that enabled?
Yeah, good question. So easiest way is just go to your Sync portal account, go to the Insights tab on the side, and hit Request Access. So right now it's still technically in a beta phase because we are adding some improvements and new features to Insights that we're looking to get some user feedback on. But if you go and request access there, you'll get approved. So that should be a fairly quick process.
Got it. And let's say that I've been successful at adding rooms. Maybe a room is accidentally removed from sync. Is there a SCCM method of deployment to get rooms added back?
Yeah, exactly. So this is very similar to kind of the deployment method I talked about earlier. So if you have accidentally kind of overwritten something or something's happened on that machine, it's very easy to leverage the bulk provisioning package that we have, which has the sync stub installer and the token to push that back out to the machine with SCCM, execute it, and it'll connect back up to Sync Portal.
Got it. And so far we've talked about a lot about our cameras, right? Which is a lot of the devices that our audience owns. We mentioned the Tune headset, but overall, it's most of Sync what Sync covers is pretty camera centric. Can you talk about maybe audio and mic sources? Is that going to play a picture into Sync at some point?
It's a good question. I mean, today we're just leveraging our own technologies, and so any of the sort of external mics that we're able to connect to the Rally Bar Mini, and those types of mic sources, we through the monitor devices that we do have, we can monitor devices like the Shure P300 audio systems, at least at a sort of USB level, to understand if the device is connected or not. But there's always some room for exploration down the road here with potentially partner integrations and expanding on that.
Got it. And this was a neat question, and hopefully don't catch you off guard because it's the first time I've seen it. But is there so Sync is it's very device and room centric. Is there a way that Sync can tell whether certain meetings were run on Zoom and then maybe another meeting room used WebEx, and to kind of get a gauge of which platform was used in certain rooms or overall?
That's a good question. I unfortunately with the service provider types, we don't get a lot of information back from that, so we can't really tell you too much today about what apps are being used in these certain rooms. But thinking a little forward looking with what we have with the appliance devices, with the onboard running like Zoom Room applications or other partner applications, I think that's something that we could explore of how we can surface more sort of those analytics.
Got it. And and this is also another interesting question, but I think very valid. Um, Speaking of content cameras in Microsoft Teams rooms, right? Those will use something like a Brio or a 930 as a content camera. Do we have plans to support firmware updates for those cameras to use as content cameras in Teams rooms?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So yeah, today those devices are at least surfaced as monitor devices. So like the Brio or the C930, if you're leveraging those as content cameras in your team's rooms, you'll still see that they're connected and understand, if there's a problem, if it gets disconnected. So at least you have the monitoring aspect. But then in terms of actually doing the firmware updates for those devices, this is something that we don't have coming in the near term, but it's definitely something that's in our backlog that we're thinking about uh, for updates for the meeting room aspect of those personal collab devices.
Got it. And this question just popped up, and I thought it was really interesting. So I know that we're skipping topics a bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about the management capabilities IT departments will have for the Tune app?
Yeah, so you'll have the of course like the full control of installing the application, and it'll be a very similar process to how Sync is deployed today. So with the token, allow it to connect back up to the Sync portal. So you'll have the full sort of flexibility in a very similar way to how this Sync app is deployed. I'm just trying to think of anything else I can kind of mention on that topic. Um, do you think that covers the question there, Calvin, or is there a part I should drill in on?
Yeah, I think we did talk about it a bit, right? Tune is definitely meant for the end user. I guess one maybe as a follow-up question to that, can IT departments make the update to the latest version of Tune for the end user, or is that something that the end user will have to manage on their own?
Okay, yeah, good question. So, yeah, right now with Tune, like of course you'll get notifications if if there's app updates available for you. But I think similarly to the Sync app that we have running on the PCs, we'll hopefully be able to do some updates in the background to make sure that the Tune app is always updated. But again, this is something that we're kind of working through right now with our engineering team to understand, what is going to be A, possible, and B, the best case for our user. So we still need to get some answers to these questions ourselves.
Got it. Got it. So we are running a little bit shorter on time, so I'll just try to get through a couple more questions and then we'll wrap. But I think this is a pretty good question, and I know we touched on it a bit. So going back to the question about, hey, here's Logitech Sync, and then here's the Teams admin portal, right? So maybe can we expand a little bit on, like, how should we use these together, right? Because Teams rooms, they're added automatically. Sync maybe takes a little bit more effort. Um, can you talk a little bit more about how these coexist and supplement each other?
Yeah, I like. Yeah, I think that the Teams admin console is great, and it surfaces some very basic information about the USB peripherals specifically that are being connected to them. But if you want to understand at a more granular level, for example, like the all the different components connected to your Rally and like pod disconnections, things like that, understand the firmware information for all the different components for potential troubleshooting, the ease of firmware updates, being able to schedule those for whenever you want in just a couple of clicks, and then also the ability that we have to kind of pull out the information from the meeting room in terms of device usage and occupancy in the rooms during those meetings, I think is extremely powerful and beneficial or supplementary to the experience that you're getting from the Teams admin console. And I think that a lot of the information can be very usefully cross-correlated. For example, like you'll have a lot of information about, when were people meeting with teams, and did they show up to these meetings, or when were meetings booked? But then you can cross-reference that with information in sync to understand, oh, I there was supposed to be a meeting at this time, but actually nobody showed up in the room. So this is very supplement or complementary information to one another. And as I mentioned with the sync insights, we're continually working to improve that. And I think one of those features is to be able to easily export data so that you can easily kind of correlate it with information that you're able to gather from Teams as well.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a good point, right? So there's an aspect about the Teams admin console and Sync in terms of you both get kind of like meeting insights or meeting attendance, but one part of it is with Teams you get to see how many people joined in that meeting, and it was very virtual. Versus with Sync, you actually get to see like who actually went into the room, right? So it's kind of like this distinction between physical space in kind of some respects of like how our meeting is being run.
Definitely. And the one extra point I wanted to add there is even just talking a little bit further about the appliance devices. So like for Rally Bar and Rally Bar Mini, that these devices they can be managed through these other platforms as well. But in terms of a lot of the advanced settings that we're going to be able to offer, like for remote configuration, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to manage these devices remotely that won't necessarily be offered through those types of platforms, at least right away. So I think there's always going to be a lot more that you can do with our products in sync versus those platforms. So I think by leveraging them sort of side by side, you're pretty covered in terms of like Calvin said, with the sort of the virtual meeting space in terms of the platform that you're using, and then in the physical space with the Logitech hardware and equipment in the room. I think you're really covered in a pretty meaningful way.
Got it. Well, Trevor, thanks for taking the time to answer those questions. We do have a minute left, so I do want to wrap up. And really, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining today, submitting your questions before the meeting, during the meeting. If we couldn't get to your questions, we will follow up after the event. I also want to thank ImageThink for adding color to our conversation today. We will share that illustration along with the recording of the video so you can watch it on demand. And if you have any additional questions that we may not have gotten to, please feel free to reach out to sync@logitech.com, which is spelled SYNC at logitech.com. Trevor, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
Well, first of all, just thank you very much, folks, for tuning in, and I'd love for you to go try out adding more rooms to sync, and give us as much feedback as you can.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks, everyone, again for joining, and we'll see you next time.